So today we'll be learning about the arm and the elbow joint. Why I stopped brachial plexus? I stop it for a reason. I want you guys to have some time so you can be ready and prepare for that. And then my next lecture will be, I'll be talking about injuries of the brachial plexus, because that's a very complex type of topic and you need to understand all its detailings. So let's start. These are my objectives. You can read them through. Now, without any further delay, I like to go over for these bones. And what are you looking at here? You're looking at this bone, which is located within my arm. This is called humerus. It has an upper end and a lower end. I think I should close that little window. It is obstructing your view. So I think it is fine now. So we are looking at a humerus, and this is the long bone, the longest bone in my upper limb. Longest, strongest. So now let's label it. You're looking at the head part, and there is a red line which demarcates the head from the rest of the humerus, and this is my anatomical neck. When I use the word anatomical neck, it means I have another neck as well, which is coming up. And then we are good with this lesser and greater tubercles. Going further, we have an area which is visible medially on the shaft, laterally on the shaft of the humerus, and that is my deltoid tuberosity. My deltoid muscle get its distal attachment at this site. Now, at the bottom, medially, there is a very prominent area. That is my medial epicondyle. It's a source for giving proximal attachment to so many flexor muscles of my forearm. And then you can see the medial and lateral epicondyle on both the views. And then we are familiarized with this term. We use it a lot, the trochlea and the capitulum. I don't see any problem with these two terms. Now, surgical neck. Surgical neck is the weakest area, the place where my proximal humerus meets with the shaft. And if there's a fracture occurring, the most common site to occur at this location, and it has certain clinical correlation, and that is coming up. Now, let's look at the proximal part of my humerus bone, more highlighted version, and there we can see the head. We talk about this anatomical neck, and then we can see we are good with the lesser and the greater tubercles, and in between we can see intertubercular sulcus. But before that, can you see this orange line which is going transversely? That's my surgical neck, and it has its clinical significance. Very important structures are related to it. I'll be talking shortly. My next slide is about that. And then, can you see this green thing which is hanging down, which is running downwards in between my lesser and the greater tubercle? That is indicative of intertubercular sulcus or groove, and this is the place where the long head of my bicep lives there. And then you're looking at what? You're looking at the lower end of my humerus, and this lower end of the humerus, you can see the trochlea, you can see the capitulum part, you can see the medial epicondyles, and then you can see lateral epicondyles. There is a pit, there's a depression just above the trochlea. We call it coronoid fossa. And then above to the capitulum, there is another depression, and we call it radial fossa. And then on the posterior aspect, we have another depression, and that has the name of olecranon fossa. Are we good? Now, can you see these red lines which are going upwards? Where? Laterally. These are my, is it lateral or medial? These are medial. So these are my medial supracondylar lines. Ridge, whatsoever you like to call. And these are the lateral supracondylar ridge. These ridges has been used for various muscle attachments. Are we good so far? Now, let's look at now the nerves. There are 4 very important nerves who are closely related to this bone. And let's look at them. You can see, can you see this green structure? That's my axillary nerve, which is located where? At the surgical neck of the humerus. Then can you see this, which is going obliquely? That runs on the posterior aspect of my shaft of the humerus, and that nerve is my radial nerve, and it runs in the radial groove or the spiral groove. When you go to the lab, please look into this feature. And then in the lower part, in the anterior aspect of my lower humerus, there is a nerve which is descending downwards in front, and that one is nothing but my median nerve. And then one last thing, which is going behind my medial epicondyle, and that is my ulnar nerve. So these 4 very important nerves are closely associated with this bone. So now if I see a fracture of this bone in a given X-ray, I can always speculate how about the status of the nerve. And it's not only the nerve, we have vessels also here, we have arteries and vein also here. So we have to be little bit proactive when we are looking into any person who walks in after any kind of trauma. And if you're not acting in a pro way, then probably you're missing out something very, very important. Oh, I fixed the bone. What about the nerve? If the nerve is not functioning, means those muscles lost their function. So they cannot do the job what they're supposed to do. So this is really important. And if you're not familiarized with that, think a force who was that strong, who caused a bone to damage. What about the nerve and artery and vein? Okay, now look at the common fracture sites which are associated with this bone called humerus, the proximal part, and that is my surgical neck. The location is at the surgical neck. This is one side, mid shaft, and then the distal shaft, and this is supracondylar type of fracture. What happens, we'll be seeing in my next coming X-rays. Are we good so far? Now, look at it. What do you see in this X-ray? Huh? Normal? I'll have another view for you, gentlemen. Are you calling it normal? Look at, focus here. Focus here. Look at how normal it is. That was an anterior posterior view. This is a lateral view of the same thing. Look how normal it is. Now what can go wrong? This fracture is at my surgical neck. So let's bring it here. The deltoid, and in between you can see the shaft of the humerus. And this is my axillary artery. And from this axillary artery, I have posterior circumflex humeral branch, a big one, and anterior circumflex humeral. Look at it. What is the difference between, even in the appearance? The big area of surgical neck is closely associated to my posterior circumflex humeral artery. So it is more prone. If I see this, think of if a bone is transected like that, what's going to happen with this artery, and especially my posterior circumflex humeral artery. And then you can see the axillary nerve and look at its different branching. So these two structures are highly susceptible to be damaged if this type of fracture is coming. So if you see any case with this fracture, even with dislocation, always look for these structures. I cannot move anything. This is how it is. Either I can stop the recording part if you want that. Now, this is showing you fracture of the mid shaft. And what are the association? Look at it. The close association of my radial artery, profunda, brachii, vein, and artery. So these are the structures who are susceptible. If the radial nerve is damaged, my patient will be not able to extend. So wrist drop. I can see very easily. Fracture is here and patient cannot do it. Oh, your radial is gone. And then I feel for pulses and all that. Then the last one, the supracondylar fracture. Look at it, what happens. And this is the outcome. We learned that anteriorly we have related median nerve and brachial artery. And if that type of injury is occurring, to these things. Think of median nerve is the sole nerve responsible to control my flexor compartment of the forearm. So flexion will be a lot more compromised. Brachial artery is gone, then we have Walkman's ischemic contracture. We'll be talking in the clinical anatomy lecture. What is that situation? So these are the possible associated injuries which may occur. Sitting in the first row and sleeping, it's excellent. Now, let's look into a section of the arm. Let's put the things here. Red is skin. Under the skin, I have superficial fascia, and this superficial fascia has a membranous layer and a fatty layer. You can go, gentlemen. Relax. And then what do we have? In this superficial fascia, I have two veins. One is located laterally, and that is my cephalic or cephalic vein. And medially, I had basalic veins. These are the superficial veins. And then this green circle is the deep fascia. These are making the complete wraps around my arm. This is my deep fascia. Now, in between, this gray structure is my humerus. And then you can see there are two intermuscular septums. So they divide my arm into two compartments. One is anterior, one is posterior. So I'm allowed to call after that an anterior compartment and a posterior compartment. Who lives in anterior compartment? Those who flex my shoulder, elbow, and supinate, where at my proximal radio-ulnar joints. Are we good? Which nerves control them? Musculocutaneous nerve. This nerve is the continuation of my lateral cord of the brachial plexus. If someone has an injury to the lateral cord, if someone has an injury to the musculocutaneous nerve, the consequences will be that patient will not be able to perform these actions on the given joints. This is how we understand musculoskeletal system. And who lives in my posterior compartment? Only one muscle, that is triceps. And what it does, it extends the shoulder and the elbow. And the nerve who controls it, that's the radial nerve. Guys, if you know this much, you are done. 50% you are done for today's lecture. Now we have to add on things. Now, you're looking at a scapula, humerus, and radius ulna along with an elbow joint. So let's put a superficial layer of muscles where in my arm? Biceps. Look at it. Two heads, long and a short, and it's going to the radial tuberosity on the radius bone. And this is my one who looks short. When you'll be going to the lab, you'll see that the one who looks short is deceiving. Actually, it's a long head. And one who looks long, it is short head. Remember, short head lives medially and long head lives laterally. Short head goes to the coracoid process, long head goes to the supraglenoid tubercle, and distally, this muscle is attached on the radial tuberosity through a tendon, and then it becomes a fibrous sheath. We call it aponeurosis, and that is attached. And this is how we can have both the things, flexion, extension at my elbow, along with the supination at my proximal radio-ulnar joint. So now, this bar is obstructing a lot. Let me. Is it fine so far? Huh? Okay. Sideways or where? Come quickly. Run, run, run. That's not bothering.
Yeah,
But I'm more bothered with this long bar.
the long bar, it has to be somewhere, but it was better. It's better downward.
Okay, fine. Perfect. Thank you, Lina. So, can we see that supraglenoid tubercle? And then coracoid process. And there down, the tendon goes to the radial tuberosity. Are we good? And what are we doing? We are hammering it. This is a clinical test. When we want to elicit biceps reflex, when your patient is undergoing any neurological examination, doctor taps it. It's not a hammer. It is called a hammer, but it is made up of rubber. So when you tap it here, you can see the contractility, and you are basically observing the spinal cord level. When we are speculating some nerve injury, we are doing this test. And what are we hunting? C5 and C6 level of the spinal cord. Is it fine? If somebody has a problem, we can just check this activity. This is important, guys. We love to ask it. So mark it down. You can see that in a red box. Okay. So now, to keep this long head of the biceps staying where it has to, there is some transversely going bands which are just stapling it down with the humerus in between the bicipital groove, and this is my transverse humeral ligament. And then you can see dislocation is basically preventing the dislocation of the long head. Now, can you see this gray thing? Just focus at the lower end, at this place, and you can see the aponeurotic part, this gray sheet, we call it bicipital aponeurosis. Are we good so far? Guys, biceps is one of those muscles. If you don't know about it, there is no excuse. Now, just behind this aponeurosis, you can see a tube going down. That is my brachial artery, and then lateral to it, I have my median nerve. And this is the location when you are checking someone's blood pressure, you are just putting your fingers, you are trying to isolate this artery, pulsation. And have you noticed the cuff for the blood pressure measuring? There's a circle made on top of that. So you're expected to bring that circle in this location. It should be medially because your hunt is brachial artery. And then you're putting your headpiece of your chest piece of your stethoscope specifically at this side. So when you open up the cuff, the blood which starts coming, it gives you sound. And then you can say, oh, you have 120 by 80 or vice versa. These are important. So now we have seen brachial artery and median nerve, how they are closely associated with each other. So what are the actions provided by this biceps brachii? Never forget, powerful supinator. First job, powerful supinator of what? When you talk of an action, talk with reference to a joint. Powerful supinator of my proximal radioulnar joint. And then, if my hand is in supinated position, it acts as a flexor at the elbow joint. If somebody asks me who's the prime mover for bringing flexion at my elbow, and the choice is between brachialis and biceps, brachialis is the first choice. If I ask you who's the supinator of the human body, there is a muscle called supinator, but its job is not that. It's not a prime. The prime one is biceps. So these points need to be very clear. And the example has been given when you open the cork of a bottle. Now, you can see in reality the different parts, and then here you can see on this side, you are looking at under this biceps, we have brachialis muscle. Brachialis is the strongest, is the prime mover, flexor of my elbow joint. You can see that it's coming from the lower shaft, anterior aspect, and it is going to a tuberosity, which is there. Shortly, we'll be looking at this. Now, what is that? Your hand is in pronated format. You are contracting bicep. Just focus here. Pay your attention at this place. You are just bringing contraction here. By this contraction, look at the mechanism. The tendon, it moves my radius. Because radius, my proximal radioulnar joint, it's a pivot type of joint. When this muscle pulls, the bicep tendon muscle pulls it up, so it moves. You can see the arrow is going upwards. So when it moves, what I get? I get supination. And when this muscle relaxes, you can see that this tendon goes straight. So when my hand is in supinated form, this tendon is straight. And when I have to bring the supination, it has to rotate. Where? At the longitudinal axis on my proximal radio-ulnar joint. Are we good so far? Guys, this is really important. And we really need you guys to understand it very nicely. Now, the different format, one thing worth looking at, your hand supinated, pronated, and there is something in between that is called mid-prone position. This mid-prone, again, is the point of attraction. It's coming up. So you can do yourself. What is this? Supination, pronation, mid-prone. When you're shaking your hand, mid-prone. When you're chopping, when you're playing tennis, mid-prone. Now look at, this is the same mechanism. This picture I've taken, I think, from Moose. So you can see that how biceps and supinator, they work together. Because the job of these two muscles is to bring about supination at my proximal radio-ulnar joint. Are we good? Now, going further. This is a very interesting muscle. I have never seen any exam of MSK where we did not ask about this muscle. So unique, so pertinent, so important. This muscle is known as brachioradialis. It is a muscle of the arm. Going to my forearm, perform flexion and called as an extensor, controlled by the nerve of extensor and performing a flexor job. So very unique character. That's why it's very commonly asked. Brachioradialis muscle. Who controls it? Radial nerve. But this muscle acts as a very significant flexor when my arm at elbow is in mid-prone position. Let's say someone's musculocutaneous nerve is cut. Cannot bring flexion at the elbow. But if you bring the hand in mid-prone position, you can bring the flexion at your elbow joint. Who's doing it? Brachioradialis. Because musculocutaneous is cut, radial nerve is not cut. Are we clear with this? Guys, anatomy is critical thinking and trying to match up with these information. We are not asking you write short note on musculocutaneous nerve. Nobody is asking you. We'll be asking you if this happens, this accident, this nerve is cut, which of the following muscle will lose its function? Someone has an injury to the lateral cord, is still able to perform flexion at the elbow joint. Which of the muscles are bringing it? So brachioradialis comes in play. So the questions are like that. I'm telling you the true questions. I'm not hiding anything. This is it's coming from, do you remember we talked about the supracondylar, the lateral and medial epicondylar ridges. So this is coming from one of those from the lateral side. Distally, I cannot show you because this bar is sitting here. Let me move it a bit. I don't know what is the solution for this recording business. So guys, its distal attachment is really important. How? Somebody falls in an outstretched hand, push, broke his distal radius. The hand goes like a dinner fork. And who retains the broken fragment? Because my brachioradialis muscle is attached there. That's why the hand goes in a typical dinner fork deformity. We'll be learning when we'll be talking about wrist. Very, very important and very commonly asked question. So now this is about what I was saying, it's unique and all that. Now the deeper layer. We talked about superficial. Now the deeper layer, can you see a muscle which is coming from the coracoid process and going to the medial aspect, upper shaft of my humerus, coracobrachialis muscle. This muscle is very developed, well prominent in chimpanzees and gorillas and those things, those who climb, those who have jumps like Tarzan. So, but we don't do it. Anybody doing it here? I don't know. So this coracobrachialis, this muscle, how I identify it? It's pierced by a nerve, and that nerve is my musculocutaneous nerve. If I'm struggling, where is the musculocutaneous nerve? If I see a muscle pierced by a nerve, that nerve is musculocutaneous, and that muscle is coracobrachialis muscle. Look at it, coracoid process and then going to the medial aspect of shaft of the humerus. Then this is the huge one, my prime mover, the chief flexor of my elbow, that is my brachialis. And it's going where? To the ulnar tuberosity. Two new terms we have used, ulnar tuberosity, radial tuberosity. Ulnar tuberosity for brachialis, radial tuberosity for biceps. Now, what are the jobs? Who's doing what? Brachialis, major flexor of the forearm at elbow. This is a key point. Specific. Coracobrachialis, a weak flexor. Brachioradialis flexes the forearm when the position of my hand is mid-prone. Now, I'm bringing something really important. The arterial plan of my upper limb. Stay focused here. Look at it, who's coming out? My brachiocephalic from the arch of the aorta, and it divides into common carotid and subclavian on the right side. This is my right common carotid and this is my right subclavian artery. This right subclavian artery, when it crosses the outer border of my first rib, we call it now axillary artery. And when it passes by teres major, we call it brachial artery. When it crosses the neck of the radius, we call it radial and ulnar arteries. Then they enter in my hand as superficial and deep palmar arches. And then they become ultimately the digital arteries. This is the whole arterial plan of my upper limb. I started from the heart. And now let's label it the things. So from the subclavian artery, we have these branches. We are not bothered for them at the moment. Just to show it to you. This is my axillary artery. When subclavian artery becomes axillary artery, when it crosses the outer border of my first rib. And this is teres major. After this teres major, we will not call him as axillary. Now it becomes brachial. Now, we all know this muscle, pectoralis minor. This muscle crosses over this axillary artery. And because of this muscle, we categorize them. We divide this artery into three parts. A part before, a part under, and a part after. Let's label it. This is my pectoralis minor. Number one, give one branch. Number two, give two branches. Number three, give three branches. No need to go in details. Only know this much and the names of the branches. So number one, first part, only one branch, which is going to my thoracic wall. What do we need to call it? We call it superior thoracic artery. Are we good? Second part, two branches. What are these two branches? This first branch from the second part divides into so many, but what is that? It is my thoracoacromial artery, which is further having four further branches. And then this is the second one, which goes to my lateral wall of the thoracic cavity, and that one is my lateral thoracic artery. If somebody asks you, name the two branches coming from the second part of the axillary artery, so you have two arteries. One is lateral thoracic, and the other one is thoracoacromial artery. And then from the third part, we know them. Anterior, posterior, circumflex humeral arteries. And the third one is going to my lateral thoracic wall. It's hidden. Subscapular artery. So you don't forget, axillary artery divided into three parts. First part, one branch, second part, two, third part, three. Are we good? Now there are names. Let's ignore them. Now let's look at, we talk about this. You're looking at coracobrachialis, brachialis, and brachioradialis. Are we good so far? Only biceps is missing here. So now we'll be talking about the arteries and the veins and the nerves. Important one. We are good with this. Who's this? Subclavian becomes axillary, become brachial. Is brachial here after teres major. It divides at the neck of the radius into one which goes to my first digit, that is my radial, and one which goes to the other side, that will be my ulnar. Those of you who are sleeping, I don't know, am I throwing some sleeping pills? Hello, ma'am. Can I have a cup of coffee? Enjoy. I'm talking to you. No, she don't. Yes. So these are my radial and ulnar artery. And when you visit any clinic, a nurse record your pulse. She is targeting radial artery. Ulnar is not used a lot because radial is easily localizable. But in a situation, we may use ulnar, but not commonly. It's difficult. So now, lateral to my axillary, it's my lateral cord, and we said it pierces my coracobrachialis. You saw it piercing, and then this is my musculocutaneous nerve, and what it does, it supplies coracobrachialis, it supplies biceps, it supplies brachialis. Guys, I remember somebody was asking me this question, and I said I will take it. The question was, yes, the question was that spinal nerve has motor, sensory, and sympathetic. But why are you saying this is a cutaneous branch? Look, this motor branches, the motor component will use for muscles. And there is a sensory component which is for the skin. If a nerve is done after supplying all the muscles, so now it's left with the job of the sensory part only. So a nerve can continue, a spinal nerve can continue as a sensory after finishing the motor job. Let's say you have $10 in your pocket and you burn 9 out of them at the nearest Walmart, and now you're left with $1. So this $1 is for another task. So 9 for Walmart and 1 for your anything else. So now medial to my artery, we have the medial cord, and this medial cord, it does nothing in the arm. It goes, supplies very limited part in my forearm, but it's the main nerve for my hand, and that is my ulnar nerve. Are we good? Are we good so far? Now, lateral cord and medial cord, they decide to do something together. So they make a nerve, median nerve. Median nerve does nothing in my arm, but it is the sole nerve for my flexors of the forearm. And this is where we record the blood pressure. Are we good? Now, the whole arterial plan, veins, 2 colors, light and dark, superficial and deep veins. Now, what we have learned so far, summarize. All these muscles are innervated by a musculocutaneous nerve. Ignore this except one. This is a lot. Which artery supplies here? Brachial artery. Superficial layer, musculocutaneous nerve. Deep has some extra branch because the muscle is brachioradialis. Are we good? Now we are looking at the arm from the back. Life is very easy here. Triceps, long head. Going to the infraclinal tubercle. There is my lateral head. And then when I remove this lateral head, underneath I'll find medial head. And they are going to one common place on the ulna, upper part, and we call it olecranon process. This olecranon process goes into olecranon fossa. We tap it here for reflexes to check C7 and C8. Very commonly done practice. This muscle we'll be learning in forearm, not today, and conius. We know these muscles. Just a quick recap. Who was that? Teres major and minor, infraspinatus and supraspinatus. Are we good? And then we talk about, I'm sure everybody is good with quadrangular space and triangular spaces. No need, deltoid. Quick recap. Are we fine? Different views of my triceps. It's schematic version and the other ones. You can see the full muscle, partially cut, totally cut. Now we were here. The muscle has been cut. So now you can see here the place, the spiral groove where we have seen in the mid-shaft fracture. Over there, radial nerve, profunda brachii, artery and vein. Are we good? Triceps, powerful extensor of the forearm. Where? At the elbow joint. Now summarize. Only one muscle. 3 parts are there for that. Are we good? Let's have a quick summary of all of them. What they do. Now I have to move this. So you can read it. Who brings flexion, extension, pronation, and supination at what are those locations? Now, we are in process of making the elbow joint. And you know who are these bones who are contributing? All of them are lined by hyaline cartilage. Are we good? Look at it. Can you see those 3 dots, red color? They are indicating 3 joints. One is between the trochlea and the ulna. That is my famous elbow joint. Elbow joint is a complex. That is the famous, and this joint is my which type of joint? Hinge type. So it is humero-ulnar joint. And then a joint between capitulum and the head of the radius. And then there is a proximal or the superior radio-ulnar joint. Are we good so far? Now look at the bones, how they are tangled up. Let's build them. The bones are together. Let's label them. The lateral epicondyles, medial epicondyles. Are we good so far? Guys, this joint has only 2 ligaments, male, for the elbow joint. We are good with these labels, nothing new coming so far. Everything is fine? Any problem? Olecranon, everything is clear? So let's put now the capsule. This is how the capsule covers my elbow region. And then we have, there's a bursa. This is called student's bursa. Can you see this bursa? Under my elbow. When you put your elbow on a table, this bursa is preventing your elbow. Subcutaneous olecranon bursa, but in a simple language, we call it student's bursa. Now there is a ligament which goes wrap around the head of the radius, annular ligament. And then we can see laterally, a lateral collateral and a medial collateral ligament. Simply remember, radial collateral, and then they have different parts. It has anterior, middle, posterior. If you forget them, it's okay. Simply remember, elbow joint, how many ligaments? 3. Lateral, medial, and annular. Are we good? What movements are occurring here? Only flexion extension. Are we good with this X-ray? When I look at this X-ray, I can simply say this person will develop osteoporosis shortly. Because look at the bone density. Less intake of dairy products. One of the factors, calcium levels. So we can bring only this section at this joint. Elbow joint. This is the key thing. Don't forget it. What type of joint? How many ligaments? What movements? Who is the stabilizing factor? Are we good? Nothing wrong with the X-ray. I said the bone mineral density is very low. This person will develop tomorrow osteoporosis. My dear, there's a scan for that. You do it, you send this person, you get the reports. Okay? But you can tell this person, probably your intake is low. You should take more calcium. How to know? Take the blood sample, send him for the X-ray, you get the reports. How did I know from the X-ray? I spent my life. And look at the, I will show you, next time I'll bring a healthy bones. Look at the pattern of the bones. They are very, they are showing the pattern is not that promising. How I know that, it comes with the practice. It's not only I do one X-ray and I'm a radiologist. Okay, so radiation ulna, head, there is the organon. Same, I'm making the proximal radioulnar joint. This is my annular ligament and it keeps it. And what I'm making, the pivot type of joint, proximal radioulnar joint. And annular ligament does it. This is the axis of movement. Are we good? When we use it, supination, pronation. Now, a very important condition, look at him. We love our kids. And parents love to hold their kids like that. And what will happen? Got it? The head of the radius pops out of this annular ligament, and then this is the nursemaid elbow, and then there are so many things are occurring. So this type of love should be controlled. And you have seen another type of parents. In a love, you are throwing your baby up. Sometimes you cannot hold him back. And even when the baby is going up and coming down, can have a head injury without colliding with anything, with a concussion. The brain collides with the wall, counter-proof mechanisms. So superior radioulnar joint, what is must know here? Thank you very much.